everybody, and welcome to the 705th edition of the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show. I'm your host, Daniel Feuerstein, give you American perspective of our clubs, leagues, players, national team, and other fabulous moments. Get your daily reading from me and other writers like these two gentlemen over at Beyond the 90, at beyondthe90.substack.com, and, of course, locally in New York at baddogsports.com. The chat room on YouTube is open. Talk amongst yourselves if you like. I'll try to answer everything to the best of my abilities. And please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube to get your daily American soccer content. As you can see, my guest tonight, my colleagues at Beyond the 90, Brett Mullenix, supporting and covering Indy 11. And, of course, from League One Updater, Alex Ashton. Guys, it's great to see you. Brett, first time on the show. Alex, your second time on the show. It's great to have you both on to talk about this very important moment when it comes to the U.S. Open Cup for the 2026 edition. As most of you already know, there has been what I like to believe, gentlemen, a mixture of good but unfortunately bad, and we're definitely going to get into both situations. First, we go to Alex. Alex, when you heard about, of course, the initial leaking of information from the Blazing Musket, of course, out of New England in the Boston area, that there was going to be a reduction of clubs going into the 2026 format. What were your thoughts about that? And at the same time, you know, obviously you want to get down to see what the real scoop was. Were you shocked by this? Did you feel that this was against the norm of why they're doing this?
Yeah, at the time, like everyone else, I think I had that reaction that this is USL pulling in MLS and pulling out teams. Hindsight turns out it wasn't quite the full story, but yeah, we all had that initial reaction, I think.
No, I agree. And Brett, if I can go to you, obviously no one wants to see any clubs not be included in the Open Cup. I've had my battles against Major League Soccer, of course. I still want to see all 27 American clubs in the Open Cup because I'm getting sick and tired of seeing the eventual champions not defend their title. And I think that's just absolutely wrong, and it's a slight against the Open Cup. But, you know, when you saw that reaction about the club situation for USL, what did you think?
So one of the things that I first took notice was, especially when the announcement came out, were recently like expansion sides. One of the things that for clubs like Fort Wayne FC, the Cosmos here, one of the great ways to try to really build a fan base is to have some local rivalries. And that gets kind of eliminated when they're not able to participate, when they're in those smaller brackets. So, like, especially with the top teams like New York City FC not taking on the Cosmos, or even some of the other CONCACAF. It just arbitrary. It's hard to follow for a lot of fans, a lot of clubs, and it just adds to the confusion that kind of USF has kind of made at this point.
Yeah,
No,
I
it
agree
really
with
is.
that. Last year we saw like that was like our first looks at like Portland and Naples, and those were some pretty exciting matches. Like Portland had a good little run there.
It did, yeah. And if you not allow those teams to have those opportunities, it hampers the whole experience, and it allows, especially with some of those other those expansion sides, to really fine tune some things prior to this early in the season, which would be very critical.
Yeah, it really will be. And, you know, I enjoyed watching Portland taking on Hartford, and then they took on Rhode Island, got eliminated by Rhode Island. Then Rhode Island took on the New England Revolution, sadly fell by a goal, and the Revs went ahead into the next round. But still, though, that's what you want to see. You want to see these clubs against whoever the next level is above them to go get them. And even if they do or don't advance, whoever does, you want to see them against the top clubs in the top league of American soccer. And that's the one thing that really bothers me. And I agree with you, Alex. At first, I'm thinking to myself, this can't be USL all of a sudden pulling an MLS. I just can't see that happening. But, you know, I stayed back. I was a bit weary. I wanted to make sure that That wasn't the case, and lo and behold, it was by U.S. Soccer that did this. And we're going to get into that right now. And here's the list at right now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put up the graphic right here. As everyone can see, the 17 clubs coming into next season's Open Cup proper tournament: Charleston, Colorado Springs, Detroit City, El Paso, Tulsa, Hartford, Indy 11, Lexington, Loudoun, Louisville, New Mexico, Orange County, SC, Phoenix, the current champions of USL Championship, Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Rhode Island, Sacramento, and San Antonio. The clubs that are out that did not qualify for the playoffs, obviously Birmingham Legion, Las Vegas Lights, Miami FC, Monterey Bay FC, Oakland Roots, Tampa Bay Rowdies, and the two expansion sides coming in, Brooklyn and Sporting Jacks. And with USL League One, basically all original, well, I shouldn't say original, but all the 13 teams that played this past season in 2025 are coming back for 2026 Open Cup, but all the amateur, excuse me, not the amateur, but all the expansion clubs coming into 2026, Boise, Corpus Christi, Fort Wayne, the Cosmos, Sarasota, will not be in next year's Open Cup tournament proper. And to me, while I am happy that, we are going to have a good amount of teams in the Open Cup, gentlemen, but still, though, there's a problem here because I just don't understand the reluctance, because yes, it's a World Cup year and I understand that, but to be reducing the field of professional clubs just because it's a World Cup year, I'm sorry, Alex, I fail to see the response and the idea of why U.S. Soccer and the Open Cup Committee would do this.
So I've had a few people say that they sense that maybe USL had a little bit to do with it because of the instability of the expansion sides. As we now know, Sporting Cascades and Fort Lauderdale are not joining in 2026. Were there any in championship that were on the fence? I know Jacksonville and Brooklyn are joining. I guess it was already known that the others in championship are not joining. Mm-hmm. But Fort Lauderdale and Sporting Cascades had, for all intents and purposes, had been slated to join in 2026. Whatever happened, and Fort Lauderdale announced a couple weeks ago, and then Sporting Cascades finally confirmed yesterday.
Yeah.
But I don't buy that. I don't think. I think this all points towards towards MLS. And I'm not. I'm fair. I'll call out USL when USL has done something, but I think it does point towards MLS. 16 is the exact number of clubs that they wanted to put in, because they told us a while ago, earlier this year, that the clubs that are in the Champions, Champions Cup and the Leagues Cup will not be eligible. So that already takes out of the equation most of the top clubs, plus LA Galaxy, who is not one of the top clubs this year, but was still in one of those tournaments. And we're left with exactly 16 clubs. And, MLS, I think, compromised in that. I think that U.S. Soccer didn't want MLS 2 teams in anymore because that was just a bad look. So this was like the compromise, where MLS puts in these bottom 16 teams and puts in their 2 independent Division 3 teams, Carolina Core and Chattanooga FC, and it evens out at 16. And then I think USL Championship is the one that gets screwed here, because all of their non-playoff teams, with the exception of Lexington and Indy 11, are left out. I know that Oakland was very vocal about their disappointment about not being able to participate in this tournament for, again. And then of course in USL 1 it leaves out the expansion sides. And then you come up with what do we have? 14 teams plus 2 MLS 2 teams for Division 3, 16.
Yep.
So it's like the magic number here, and it all points back to the number of clubs that MLS was willing to put in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And, let's not also forget, Brett, North Carolina FC has shut down operations. They were saying that they want to make that move to the USL First Division when it finally comes to fruition 2-3 years from now. We'll see if they will come back to life then. I have a funny feeling. I think Malik might have closed the doors for good, but then again, that's just my opinion. I don't have any facts about that. But even that, with what North Carolina FC did, that also hampered USL Championship for the 2026 season, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And I think what a lot of these kind of point to is, I think, ultimately USSF not really governing as well as they should, allowing the top division kind of do its thing, allow USL to even have the promise of a Division 1 league, because teams are going to do what North Carolina FC did. Why waste money every single season, lose revenue, just most clubs lose revenue on a year-to-year basis. Mm-hmm. Why continue playing when you can try to go big and go Division 1? I think this all ultimately points to just the lack of leadership overall from USSF, allowing this kind of instability to kind of manifest and continue, and allow it basically be a Wild West that is, U.S. soccer here, for at least on the men's side, for right now. And I think it's just a bad precedent, and I think the USL really needed to get in front of North Carolina doing what they did, because I don't want to see more of that happening.
Yeah, no, definitely.
No, me neither. We cannot have these clubs just come out of nowhere and say, we're done, we're not going to compete. The day that North Carolina FC said they were shutting down, I was shocked to hear that. I was very upset, and I was basically writing about on Beyond the 90 how I think they should reverse course.
Oh, yeah.
Play 2026, play 2027 until the new first league does come into fruition, comes into life. Then you can make that move. I mean, look, I don't know if they could have expanded the main stadium at WakeMed Soccer Park, but if there was room to expand the stadium and add more capacity to it, more seating to it, I mean, I don't see where the problems lie. But then again, look, I am not in Cary. I don't know the lay of the lay of the land, so I can only speculate from a distance. But still, though, when you found out, Brett, Indy 11 made the cut due to North Carolina FC shutting down, obviously you're thrilled. But did you feel bad for the rest of the championship league?
Yes and no. It goes my earlier comment of this is just all so complicated, and it's not straightforward. If clubs knew this going into the season, and this was our precedent going forward, we would know these tiebreakers ahead of time, and it's not a guessing game come every year. It doesn't need to be changed every single season. USF doesn't need to change the Open Cup every year, just like MLS tries to change its playoffs. USL changes it. I think they've changed it a little too frequently a little bit as well, in my opinion. But these things aren't known ahead of time, and that causes chaos amongst the clubs, the fans, and just everybody involved. And it just overall not a good look for anybody.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's another thing that I think points to MLS being behind all of this.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately it is, because I've been through those years. I mean, I don't want to give I'm an old fart. I know that. Yeah, I know I'm an old fart. But I've seen when MLS was born in 1996, and then finally, we're talking about the Open Cup. At the time, I didn't even know about secondary cup competitions. I only thought of, okay, I remember the NESL back in the day, the original Cosmos, the original Strikers, the original Sounders, and all those teams back in the day. Just the league season, that's all I knew. And then, of course, I learned about the Open Cup in an MLS merchandising catalog when DC United held up a trophy that did not look like the MLS Cup. And I had no idea that was the Dewar Cup until someone said to me, "Oh, yeah, that's the Dewar Cup. That's for the Open Cup." I'm like, "Oh, what's the Open Cup?" And when I was told what it was, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I basically compare it to the NCAA men's basketball Final Four tournament because that's what it feels like. That's what this should be. This is our national championship of American soccer on all levels: professional, amateur, uh, short season clubs, whatever have you. Even the under 23s, the over 40s, whoever it is under U.S. Soccer's perusal goes in through qualifying or automatic bids. This is what this is, our national championship of the sport in this country. And that's why, I watch the draws all the time when it's the FA Cup in England or any other cup competitions, whether it be in Europe or in South America. I mean, this is what we like to see. We want to see the smaller clubs get the opportunity to knock off the bigger clubs within the federation of the game in their respective countries, and it's fun to watch, Alex.
Yeah, and this has been a long running problem with MLS. I'm from DC and had I went to DC United games for years. But I do remember that they never, even though they were a Open Cup winner, they failed to promote the matches. They were never on TV. You'd show up and you'd be lucky if there were, I think 8,000 one time in RFK Stadium was probably the biggest crowd I ever saw for an Open Cup match. I would still go, but honestly, like I wasn't even that invested in the tournament either. I was just going to watch DC United on a Wednesday night. And then it wasn't until I moved to Richmond and I showed up to watch Richmond play Charlotte FC a few years ago. And I treated it like I was back in DC. I was like, oh, this is not going to be that big of a deal. I showed up, I drove in a little bit late and I realized something was amiss when I got stuck in traffic trying to get into a Richmond Kickers match. Never happens.
Never happens.
And I was like, what is going on here? And you show up and there's 6,000 people there, fill the stadium because an MLS side is in town. And I was like, okay, now I get it. Now, going into from that perspective. But like, I think that, MLS could definitely needs to do a much better job of like promoting it. But I guess, it's not part of their money making machine. So, what are we going to do?
Exactly, Alex, because that cup competition is owned and run by U.S. Soccer. MLS is just a component to the competition, and that's the problem. MLS wants to be, as I've said this many times on Beyond the 90 and all my articles, they want to be a league, they want to be the federation, and they want to be the Confederation of CONCACAF all rolled into one. And the problem is you can't do that. You cannot govern anything and everything at once. That's why this game has been so important. Why do you think if it's a league matter, league runs it? If it's if it's a U.S. soccer matter, that's on U.S. soccer, and you have to work with U.S. soccer to make this happen. When it comes to the international situations, whether it be through the Gold Cup, now the CONCACAF Nations League, World Cup qualifying, that's CONCACAF's job to administer these tournaments for the national teams and for the club teams. And MLS has to understand you cannot do three things at once. It makes no sense. Fine, they have this partnership with Liga MX for the Leagues Cup, even though it's fraudulent. And the problem is CONCACAF's not strong enough to stop them. Because they want the influence from Garber and from MLS to say, listen, we know what's best, when it should be CONCACAF should know what's best.
Who's stopping them from like all of this? Like, who's stopping them from all the? You have all these check marks in place. You have USF who can say, "Hey, know your place," and they don't let them control them. Yet they do. CONCACAF, to your point, could be, "Hey, know your place. You know what your route is, your role is." They don't. FIFA could do the same thing if they really cared. But it's always been something that's unique here about the U.S. They always treat us as if it's still growing, even though, yes, we've probably 30 years of really true professional soccer. If you were to go back, it goes deeper the history, hundreds years. But the form that we know is like 30-something years old, I think, at this point. And they still treat us as if we're the Wild West, and we still need rail guards, and we need to be protected. And as MLS likes to put it, treated like the other major leagues. And that's not how soccer operates. And until someone finally tells MLS, actually checks them with their power, it's not going to get any better. If anything, it's going to get probably worse until something happens with
exactly.
their
Exactly.
They've got all the money and they've got the board seats.
Yeah.
And that's the number one issue, because whoever does want to succeed Cindy Parlow-Cone, you still have a problem with the board of directors, because the majority of them are in the corner of Don Garber, commissioner of MLS. Now, look, obviously there's been reports here and there that, maybe Garber's time might be coming to an end. He might be stepping down. He's done as much as he could. I don't know if it'll ever happen. If it does, we'll see what it is. But, whoever does replace Don Garber as commissioner of Major League Soccer, whoever that is, has to really work with the board of directors and with the U.S. Soccer president and say to them, and the U.S. Soccer president has to go up to that person, whoever might be the new commissioner of MLS, say, listen, we really need to separate this. We really need to break this up, and we cannot have this big block going against what is right for the game in this country. And the Open Cup is part of it. Look, I understand, how the scheduling is. Look, we're not England. They have how many matches and how many competitions and how many opportunities you have these clubs going for them, whether it be the League Cup, which is now the Caribou Cup, the Emirates FA Cup, and their Premier League season. That's like, if you don't get eliminated early, what is that? Probably like 40 to an extra 5 to 10 matches a season if you go all the way to the final in both leagues.
On
in
top
both
of
cup
European
competitions.
And then if you add in European, I think it's like upwards of 80. I think that they'll play a year, which is
exactly a lot. And we don't have that here. And I think we should be grateful at least we don't have that big amount of competition. Let's also not forget Champions League in Europe, depending on which clubs are going to the Champions League. Same thing here now in CONCACAF for the Champions Cup. Now you have 5 Liga MX clubs. You have more than 5. It's probably now 7, 8, 9 MLS clubs that are now going to the Champions Cup because they keep winning or at least advancing to the third place match and the finals match in the Leagues Cup, which I'm sorry. If you're a Leagues Cup fan, good for you. It should be abolished.
All my homies hate Leagues Cup.
Yes.
I absolutely hate it. I'm disgusted with it. It's just a fraudulent tournament. As I always say, the trophy's made out of chocolate and it's wrapped up in Reynolds Wrap foil. That's the truth. But, after all of the yelling and screaming and foot stomping that I did, our managing editor, Carter Krishnaiyer, has also said, I know you guys have said it, many fans in MLS and across all leagues, all the fans have said it, when, we defended U.S. soccer when MLS tried to exempt all first division clubs after the 2023 Open Cup ended. And they said no. And then, but MLS still delayed and forced delay after delay because they knew that, hey, we're going to dictate how this Open Cup is run. And we're only going to give you 8 clubs for 2024, which I felt was an absolute travesty.
Mhm.
It shouldn't have happened. And then, of course, last year was 16 clubs. I mean, it made me feel a little bit better, but not all the way better, because it should be all 27 American clubs going to the Open Cup. This is what, and it's a knockout tournament. So what? Look, so what?
I will
You know?
say I will say this. I think what U.S. soccer might have to also have been battling is, and I praise them for this. They kept the open division quite well. It didn't really get affected by the number of entrants, and I think that is a massive win. No matter if they still reduced the pro clubs, but they maintained the amateurism, the semi-pro, the open division. I think that is important to recognize. And I don't want to say that it's between open division and having all the professional clubs. I don't want to say that was one of their decisions, but I think that is something to make note of, because
Is it the same number of amateurs as last year?
No, it
It's-
went up higher.
Higher. Okay.
Yep.
so
It's good. Yep.
yeah,
Go ahead,
that's
Brett.
massive. To like, for a lot of people, as you always say, like, hear stories of like the David versus Goliaths, and that's huge. That is phenomenal. They kept that. I just don't always know if that trade-off's worth it for these professional clubs that we're trying to build and maintain as well. And obviously, it's one of those things that, unless like the entire system around who's governing it and how it's structured, it's not going to get better.
So
No.
do we think this is a precedent, or is this a one-off?
I'm hoping it's a one-off, all because it's a World Cup year. That's what I would like to think. It's a World Cup year, and we'll get to the schedule situation a little bit later on. I like to think it's a one.
Brett's got something to say here.
Well, I'm going to let him talk. I'm going to let him talk. But,
I do.
but I
So-
would like to believe it's a one-off. I'm going to give the U.S. Soccer Federation at least till the end of next year's Open Cup tournament. And if it's the same thing for 2027 as it is for 2026, then we got a problem. But go ahead, Brett. I want your response as well.
Yeah, I think whatever happens, USF will be steamed right. Like, whatever. So basically, if we all decide to suddenly watch all the games and get super entertained and pack out stadiums, why would they change the format? It's going to stay the same. Or if it flops hard and there's massive fan displeasure at everything, then they'll revert back to normal. Yes, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I think USF is in a situation with MLS to basically roll the dice and just let it see how it happens. I think personally this will be a precedent, just because I know there's a lot of fan interest. If you look at the recent MLS fan survey from The Athletic, I think no, not The Athletic. Can't remember who did it.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. The U.S. Open Cup is viewed as high, more like almost as high. It's just below the CONCACAF tournament, the CONCACAF Cup.
The Champions Cup, yeah.
There it is. It changes all the time. Yeah, I wish it.
Wants to say the Champions League, but it's actually the Champions Cup. Go ahead.
I know. Yeah, so it's just below that. So obviously the fans like it. The fans appreciate it, and I think there's been growing sentiment towards it. Like the shirts that like were made a few years ago with the Save the Open Cup, you've seen a lot more hype around it. You've seen increased TV production. I believe that's been really good. I just feel like because of that interested in it, it's going to lean into this. Going to stay the same. They're going to keep this format. Just why break what's broke? Or why fix what's not broken if it's making USF money, if it's keeping MLS happy, and if it's keeping enough USL Championship sides and League One sides happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cynic in me thinks that this is a new precedent, but I'm hoping it's not.
No,
Yeah.
I'm hoping not either. Like I said, I want to give U.S. Soccer at the end of next year's tournament to give them a chance to at least say to all of us, after the final happens, that we are going to go back to adding the fifth round, which of course they removed the fifth round for this season, for this upcoming tournament edition. If they add the fifth round back, then I'll be happy and everything should be fine and we're back to where we are.
Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
MLS is changing schedule, their calendar.
I know.
That's going to change the Open Cup format once again. So no matter what happens this year, it could be a test run to maintain it to the more short and condensed, given the different calendar that MLS will be going to, which will dictate how U.S. Open Cup goes, and the others following down below. So you honestly, I don't think they even know what they want to do next year with the new schedule, because they don't know how it's going to turn out for MLS. Who knows? MLS might even turn tail, or they'll just commit to it. And either Open Cup has to adapt, because a lot of the open qualifying happens basically throughout the year, and then it's primed right for that time. So you got to start almost doing that like now if you're going to move the calendar to adjust with the MLS's adjustments, or you suspend it and then you go around with it, or you condense it with a more condensed version that we have. And I don't think they have the foresight or the understanding that they need to get this set up sooner rather than later.
I agree with you there, Brett, because I think, look, since MLS has already announced they're going to change the calendar to the international calendar when the 2027 season starts. Obviously, it'll be a short season from February till May. They'll take a break in June, July, middle of July, maybe end of July. They'll restart and do this whole new thing with the international calendar schedule. And yes, U.S. Soccer has to adapt to what MLS is doing. Yes, USL is going to have to adapt to what MLS is doing, just so that everyone's on the same page, that we will have these later rounds more towards from the winter through the spring. And I think what will happen is that we're going to see amateur qualifying actually start closer towards the summer. I think we're going to get from May, June, July, amateur clubs will be attempting qualification for the Open Cup. And then I would say around September, October, it would be the first round proper. And then once everyone's aligned with MLS, changing to the international calendar, U.S. Soccer can now really schedule Open Cup matches. And at the same time, what also makes me upset is U.S. Soccer scheduling Open Cup matches and interfering with CONCACAF Champions Cup matches. Can't have that. We cannot have two separate tournaments interfering during the same week. It just makes no sense.
I mean, that's U.S. Soccer landscape in a nutshell. Nothing really made sense, and a lot of us were the crazy guy from It's Always Sunny in Philly trying to draw what everything made sense and what's all the qualification.
Yeah.
It doesn't. If you've been around U.S. Soccer for more than a year, that's just how it operates. It's the Wild West, and until we get proper governorship or actual precedent or some stability, it's going to continue being this way. I'm gonna keep hammering that point in, because I don't think I've only been a soccer fan for like 10 years at this point, and I haven't known anything to stay consistent in any of the leagues that I've been in, and that's just 10 years.
That's why Alex and I have you beat.
Constant progress, I guess you could call it.
One way.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule now for next year's Open Cup proper tournament 2026. As everyone can see, the first round proper will begin March 17th through the 19th. Second round proper will be at the end of March, beginning of April. Third round draw will happen on Thursday, April the 2nd, and that would probably mean the MLS clubs, I guess, will be entering, or I think maybe USL Championship will be entering third round proper. Fourth round proper, April 28th through the 29th. Fifth round has been now removed for 2026. Hopefully it's only for 2026. Quarterfinals will be May 19th through the 20th. So a very condensed schedule at the top. And there it is, of course, the FIFA World Cup break. No matches between June through August. Now, obviously, August to me is more like That's when MLS is going to bring in Leagues Cup. That's what I think will happen. Mostly it'll be midweek games. But we'll see what happens, and they should be abolished. That's how I feel, and all of us feel, is like we keep repeating ourselves here. Semifinals will be in September on the 15th and the 16th, and the final will be on Wednesday, October 21st in 2026. Alex, the good chunk of the American soccer calendar will be basically on pause because of the World Cup. And this is what I like, seeing this, because we cannot have matches scheduled during the World Cup, because if they are scheduled during the World Cup, no one's coming. No one is going to take a break and say, oh, I'm going to give up my World Cup game because I want to watch this Open Cup match. I think we all know that's never going to happen.
Yeah. And I know at least here in Richmond, they're going to be hosting, they're going to open the stadium and have watch parties on the big screen during the, so we're going to still be able to see all of our friends that show up to that. But it's a good opportunity for clubs to do things like that, I think.
Yeah, and also same with like supporter groups here at the Brigade Battalion. We're definitely going to be having watch parties all the time for all the U.S. games. Probably have the the club bar that we go to. We'll be having people there watching World Cup all tournament long. I think it's a great thing that all the attention will be on it and not trying to focus, hey, who's not here, who's not on the team, and what kind of disadvantage do our teams face as a result.
Exactly.
And very, very few of us can afford to go. So
that too, yes.
I barely make enough money to even buy a ticket for myself, let alone, if I can go with a friend and he can't even afford the ticket either. So we'll see what happens.
The mortgage payment.
Yes, it is. You're going to have to put a lien on your house and add more car payments to your car, for goodness sakes. Hey, you want to buy that boat? No, I'm going to the World Cup match. How much did it cost you? Oh, the money I was going to buy the boat for. Yeah.
But I will say, to be that guy, I do think there is a small possibility, especially for some team, especially the lower divisions. I'm talking like semi-pro. I'm talking maybe Division 3, because there's not as many internationals. There's more in the championship as there is then compared to League 1 and League 2. Those should really actually get some good attendances because of that World Cup fever. People may just be like, hey, we're in town. It costs like $5 to go to this amateur soccer game. And they've known to pack it out. They could go that, or if anything, there's just a whole bunch of interest from people. I'm looking at like Ballard FC or West Seattle Junction up there. They have a host city in the World Cup. What are those people going to do when there's not a World Cup game? They're probably more likely going to stay in the city. And if they like soccer enough, they'll go to one of the local ones if they are promoted right. And I think there's a massive opportunity for clubs to really see a boost during that time.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say this, and it's very interesting, and this is going towards League 1, Alex. Marcus Walfredson, he is the owner of Sarasota Paradise. And the first things first, I don't blame him for being angry. I don't blame him for being upset, and I don't blame him for how he feels, because his club this past Open Cup in USL League 2 qualified for the Open Cup, sadly lost their match to FC Naples in, I believe it was the first round. And now he's going into USL League 1 for 2026. And for him to all of a sudden get smacked in the face and being told you're not going to the Open Cup because we're not allowing the expansion clubs to enter for this upcoming tournament, and at the same time because we're only allowing only those 13 clubs that were in this past season to go. He already yelled out on social media, I know you saw it, US closed cup. And I don't blame him for being upset. I don't blame him for being angry. I was angry too. But like I said, look, we're in the we're in the media. We're going to have to hold off on our opinions sometimes and just see, okay, what's the real story here? Let's see what it is. But I don't blame him for being upset that his club will not get that automatic bid for 2026.
Yeah, so they all found out the night before the about the format and the numbers. So he was fresh off of finding it out the night before. He waited until the news went public to to express his opinions on it. But yeah, like several owners told me that they were blindsided by this format. They received the press release from the league the day before the announcement. That's how I found out more, because several people were, they were angry enough to like just, hey, here, look at this. You can leak out a little bit of information, like, so people calm down until the news comes out tomorrow. But at USL, their official story, and I tend to believe some of the people who told me this was that they were blindsided by it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a situation where, everyone wants to be a part of the Open Cup. And once again, MLS has to really, keep their hands out of the U.S. soccer cookie jar. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves here. Even though Cindy Parlow-Cone is the current president of U.S. Soccer Federation, I mean, outside of her doing the equal pay situation for both the men's and the women's national teams, what else has she done? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's great that she did that, but in reality, what else has she done to say you feel confident in her leadership of American soccer that, she's done more than her previous presidents that she, succeeded after?
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody who comes into that position is going to be able to fully take on the beast that is MLS. Unfortunately, I do understand what you're saying, and I tend to agree with a lot of that. But yeah, I think if you replace her, it's just going to be the same story with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also tend to think almost as the USF president, almost kind of like a commissioner in of itself, trying to make sure all of its shareholders, in this case, USL, MLS, college, I can't remember all the people that are a part of it, that they're all happy and satisfied. And almost I go with this type of approach. Bad news is worse than just not any news. And I think that's kind of the role that Parlow-Cone's trying to take in, kind of the, I'm not going to upset everybody. I might upset a few people, but it's not going to turn into a massive PR disaster. Look at the NWSL as an example. That's the PR nightmare from the commissioner themselves. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. Parlow-Cone's doing the role that she's supposed to be doing, and that is making sure everything keeps going flow, make changes that are good, but also not having a lot of negative feedback, especially when the national teams have been doing fairly well recently, and there has been an overall growth amongst the sports. And I think that is something that they're playing into instead of upsetting the apple cart.
No, I understand that, Brett, but still at the same time, this is part of that growth.
Oh, yeah.
The Open Cup is part of that growth. Look, I have said many, many times, and I know there are people that are yelling, screaming, demanding, we got to make the switches now. We got to switch to international calendar now. We got to get promotion relegation now. We got to get into this and get into that. But the reality of the situation is like, just to do that by themselves is not going to be enough to keep the flow of club soccer in this country to where it has to be. Everything has to come together. Everyone's got to come together and have a discussion at the table. MLS will do what MLS wants. USL will do what USL wants. And they're still going to butt heads. And until somebody finally on either side of the table or on the other, or on one side of the room or on the other side of the room can finally just take a deep breath, turn around, go to the other corner and say, let's talk. Let's just talk this out. Let's think about it. Let's work together, because Yeah, you want to compete on the field, but when you're off the field, hug it out, handshakes, get a beer, go to dinner, get a meal, share photos of your kids or your family, your vacation photos, whatever have you, and finally just come together and say, this is silly, this is stupid. Let's work together and we can finally be wholesome. What do you think, Alex?
I think that sounds great, but also, I mean, I'm cynical about about the money. Like, it's always controlled by the money, and MLS has the money.
Yep. And unless USF acts as an arbitrator, we're more likely to see a merger type of thing where everything just realigned, or it's just a war of attrition, and all we have left is MLS and Open Cup and Open Division sides. Those are the only two paths, unless USSF decides to not try to play nice. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we'll be like the Premier League and have two distinct leagues, and they actually work rather chaotically, but they work in a sort of a pyramid that makes sense for them and it works. It's either going to be an ABA NBA style merger, or we go back to Wild West.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to be needing a merger, unfortunately, because look, this is not how the sport is run. This is not the typical North American situation. Every league is their own, regardless if you think of it as a major league, minor league. No, this is all into one. That's why this is such a beautiful game, because I'm mostly MLS. Brett is mostly USL Championship. Alex is one-time MLS, relegated himself to USL League One. But, on this forum, we can all come together and have a great discussion about what we feel the game needs in this country. Because, look, Alex sees it, Brett sees it, and I see it. And many other people see it too. There's too much division. There's just too much division going on. And I've said this many times. We don't have a pyramid here. We have a Jenga puzzle, because if you pull out the wrong piece, it's going to fall apart.
And every time somebody pays a $500 million expansion fee in MLS, we just get further and further away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we cannot have that happen. But I will say this. I really do hope, like I said, I really do hope the Open Cup for next season, very soon coming, it's not that far away, March, but I really do hope it's a 1-year thing. And then when we get to 2027, then we can hopefully see everyone scrambling. I shouldn't say scrambling, but, coming together, have the understanding. Look, if MLS is now switching to the international calendar, we need to switch too. And then everything can work together, be copacetic, and then the Open Cup, which, if it does happen with USL and they decide to go international calendar too, then it's easier to schedule the Open Cup, and it makes these games not so hurried, not so compact, the way it has been these last several decades. What do you think, Brett?
As something that adulthood has quickly kind of instilled into me, I'm going to be pessimistic and say it's just going to be, every year is going to be chaos. Every year it's going to be, hey, we're going to change it up this year. Hey, we're not going to make sense. Nothing's going to make sense. And they're going to do, as Alex keeps talking, what makes the most money for the biggest shareholders. In this case, that's MLS. And to make sure that those below them are just happy enough that they can get by with it. And yeah, that just is what it is at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Let me just go ahead and talk to you individually about what's been going on now. It's the off season for everyone at this point in time. Alex, will go to you first. USL League One updater, of course. Don't forget to go to Alex Ashton's USL League One updater website. Also, of course, on Beyond the 90. How surprised were you about One Knoxville winning the championship? Was this their best season ever for the club?
I wasn't surprised. I remember back when Knoxville came to Richmond. I talked to a few of the Knoxville guys after the match, and I told one of them, I was like, "Hey, listen, like, you guys learned how to score goals. You're unstoppable. Like, your defense is already the best. and you struggled for the last 2 seasons on goal scoring, and now that's not a problem. Like nobody was going to beat them. I knew that back in that was August. I saw that one coming. So no, I was not surprised at all.
Mm-hmm. No, look, good for them. Winning the first ever league championship on a professional level, I think, for Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I went to the match.
College. Yeah,
I went to the match. It was like it's like my Super Bowl. Knoxville versus Spokane at Knoxville. It's about a 6.5-hour drive for me.
Oh, okay.
So my wife and I went down there, and we drove down, and then got a hotel right there near the stadium, and then came back the next day. Had a blast.
It was a sellout too, wasn't it?
Right. Yes, it was a sellout. There was even about maybe like 24 Spokane fans in the house as well.
That's pretty cool. I'm glad to see they made the trip over there. Obviously, they're sharing. It's the same owner, I believe, that has the Tennessee Smokies in minor league baseball. I think it is.
The owners of the Smokies and One Knox are different. They just share the stadium. It's like a partnership, but it's the Smokies stadium with Knoxville as a partner, a tenant. Basically.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, look, good for them for now. Hopefully, somewhere down the road, One Knoxville can build their own stadium. So we'll see.
And they mentioned that John Morrissey had a good article on Backhill the other day. If you missed it, about the business. He interviewed a few owners about the business aspect of it, and Drew McKenna, the owner of Knoxville, was one of the people he spoke to, and he mentioned that they definitely are down the road. We'll probably be exploring their own stadium location. The current one is a better deal for them than they had with the University of Tennessee at Regal Stadium, as far as revenue. But it's still not like a perfect own your own stadium primary tenant type deal.
Exactly. Brett, obviously Indy 11 not making the playoffs this past season, but I believe there might be some good news on the stadium front, obviously, since 11 Park, we all know the story about that unfortunate situation, but how's their stadium situation, and what do you think the club's going to do for next year?
It honestly depends on how transparent the club wants to be, because there's obviously there's pretty black and white what's going on at this point. We all know the main site, the heliport, the MLS site, is kind of officially the one that's going forward with the city. It's kind of slowed down last year or so. And the original site of 11 Park, that's not being touched anytime soon, nor to have any public support. So the only option that the team has at this point is Grand Park. Up in Westfield. They're already building a 10,000 seat stadium. I don't think they need to abide by PLS standards for right now to get that 15. I think it was 15,000 for Division I status. It's a 10,000 seat stadium. That's the exact capacity and attendance that Indy 11 gets up right now at Carroll in downtown, which I think they will actually take a hit if they move up north. That's really all their options are at this point, unless they want to try and find some land or work with the existing upgrades at Kuhn Stadium for the Rugby World Cup coming in 32, I think it was.
Okay. All right, we'll see what happens there. Also, gentlemen, we all know that the USL and the Players Union are now going to negotiations for a brand new collective bargaining agreement. Some have said that both seasons may not start on time, but you never know. Maybe a miracle will happen. They're talking right now. That's a good sign, in my opinion, and hopefully, nerves will not be fray, and hopefully both leagues will be ready to go to start next seasons. Alex, what have you heard on that front? And Brett, afterwards, you tell me what you've heard.
Well, I know that the USL Players Association went on another media push this week, which tells me that maybe they aren't as far along as they'd like to be. Other than that, there's been Connor Tobin's been out there. He's been all over the place interviewing, giving interviews left and right, and the gist of it is that they're fighting for what they believe they deserve, and I think they do deserve it. but it's just, it's not happening yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brett?
The biggest thing that I've heard, and this is the biggest point that I was looking at the recent article that was, I think it was by ESPN. Can't remember.
Yep.
Yeah,
Earlier
ESPN.
this week about the D1 standards, their like increased pay. Was their pay level the minimum? Was the thing that I had heard leading up to the season, and that's the healthcare aspect. Until that gets sorted and added into this, I think we have a higher chance of reaching either a delayed season and or a lockout than anything else by the players. And until they get that situated, I don't see anyone calling this a success for the players.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. That's always important. And I think this is where I contend about USL. And I'm not saying I'm going against USL because I cover MLS or I believe more in MLS. No, I believe in this game across our country, across our nation, all levels. USL has to really show that while they are doing good things, they cannot fall behind and just pull the rug from underneath the players. I really think they really have to come together at the negotiating table. I know they want to keep some things, and I understand that, but look, what do they want? You want to make sure that you're staying around? I understand. But, try and get a good compromise here and make sure that we start both professional leagues in USL on time and ready to go, because if that doesn't go off perfectly, we're all in a bind.
Yeah. No,
Go ahead, Alex.
I mean, talking about progress earlier. I was actually having this conversation with my wife earlier about how there's a lot of owners and out there who are they're old school. Like, this whole thing has like changed and evolved rapidly under their watch. A lot of them are still they are from the days where you didn't have to pay all your players, or players were making $1,000 a month. And they were like, oh well, they were happy with that. Like, well, no, they probably weren't that happy. Like, there are some who are willing to take that, but I wouldn't call them happy. So that's kind of what I think the Players Association is up against. They got the first one in. They set some minimum standards, and they're trying to raise those standards a little bit more, as one should do in a CBA renewal. But yeah, they're up against some owners who, I mean, I can tell you, one, Rob Ukrop owns Richmond Kickers, and I'm not going to speculate either way on his position on the CBA, but I can say he played in that era where MLS players were making $30,000 a year. At lower levels than that, like, a lot of the players just simply weren't paid; they were paying for free. And then getting paid $1,000 a month if they were lucky. And I think it's been hard on a lot of these owners to come to that realization that the league is changing very rapidly and evolving for the better, right under them.
Yeah. And I think an important thing for USL as a whole, as like an organization overall, if they want to be a Division One status with that Division One league that they're trying to set up, they have to treat their players and treat everything and actually pay like a Division One sanctioned league. They can't try to be a Division One league and pay as if they're a Division Two, Division Three. That's not something that has worked for previous sports leagues, even here in the U.S., who try to compete with the top dominant leagues. That's not how you build something that's sustainable. And I'm not saying you go the NASL route, but you can't be acting as if it's the amateur level anymore, to your point, Alex.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think the numbers that were presented in that ESPN article for the Division One league, I think that's fairly reasonable. $57,000 a year minimum at the top division for what would still be a fledgling new division.
Yep.
And I think that that it's definitely good if that trickles down, and maybe set like a minimum of 40,000 for championship and 30,000 for USL 1. like I said, I remember in the days of the MLS where a lot of players were making 30 grand a year. And I was shocked when I learned that. This was like in the 2000s,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, look, these TV deals, CBS Sports, ESPN now, showing all these games, whether it be on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, CBS Sports Network, Paramount Plus. I mean, look, I think hopefully for USL for the next contract for both, depending on if they still stick with both CBS and ESPN, hopefully they'll give a bigger and better deal. I'm not saying we're expecting an NFL sizable package deal, but at least it's sizable enough where it helps both Championship and League One to continue to be surviving and sustaining. And that helps them out, it helps the players out, and it helps the sport out. Because, look, I agree with you, Alex. The dynamics are changing, and they're growing very quickly and rapidly. I mean, when if the internet wasn't conceived, we wouldn't be having shows like this. We wouldn't have the streaming situations that we have. We wouldn't have all of this coming to our computers, our web-enabled devices, our smartphones. We wouldn't be getting this stuff. So I think USL has to understand it's time to move forward. It's time to move up. Whether you're quick enough or not, you got to understand. You got to bring in people that do understand what the hell's going on out there, so that they're not scared and nervous about what the future holds. What do you think, Brett?
I think until the league is actually stable and they actually get the money to be able to do the things that to keep them be stable long term, i.e. the stadiums, the facilities, the player union, all that, make sure that's squared away, and then they can actually step forward. Until then, they're beholden to MLS, because right now they're benefiting. I know this for a fact that MLS is behind a paywall for now. How long can they capitalize on that from a TV perspective? How much can they capitalize on rising prices at MLS games? And how much can USL capitalize while they can, while also not rapidly expanding too much? We've seen a lot of projects here in the last few years. They get announced, and suddenly you never hear from it ever again. Until we start getting that figured out, until the league starts to really actually invest for the long haul and not have topsy-turvy ownership groups, they have nothing to try to push forward to until they get their own house in order.
Very true. Alex?
Yeah, I agree with everything he just said. We aren't. Yeah, I think I'm at a loss at this point.
That's okay. That's okay. Brett stole everything you wanted to say. I understand. It's okay. But look, I think we all agree here that not just with what goes on with USL and with what goes on with MLS. Look, everything is connected, and we got to stop being disconnected, and that includes the Open Cup as well. We got to make sure that everything is working smoothly. Gentlemen, I appreciate both of you coming on the show tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully have you back on again in the new year. I want to wish you both happy holidays to you and your families, and enjoy the new year when it comes very soon. About what, I think 2-3 weeks now.
Yeah.
Just easy on the champagne, and don't light your New Year's Eve balls on fire. Okay.
And Brett, I can't wait to see Brett's review of this new Cosmos kit that dropped today.
Oh.
I just got a message about it. I cannot wait to dive further into it.
Well, we'll see. Well, keep me abreast.
Ready to hear your thoughts whenever you're ready to share.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens, but it should be a fun one. We'll see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, this will do it for tonight's episode of the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show. I want to thank my guests tonight, Brett Mullenix, Alex Ashton, both from Beyond the 90. Brett, of course, writes about Indy 11. Alex Ashton, League One updater. We appreciate your time for tonight's show. So join me next week for another Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show. As always, please, please, please enjoy your football. Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care so long, and bye-bye for now. Have a good night, everybody.